The Hangor-class submarine endurance, constraints, and the illusion of infinite reach. The modern discourse surrounds conventional submarines often suffers from a superficial fixation on numerical endurance, 60 days, 70 days, sometimes even more, without understanding that what those numbers actually represent in terms of operations. The Hangor-class submarine diverted from the Chinese type 039B Yuan-class submarine is frequently described as a platform capable of extended missiles and missiles and missions lasting up to 2 months. This figure is technically correct but strategically misleading at the same time. Endurance in a submarine is not a singular variable governed by fuel or provisions alone. It is a multi layered constraint system in which human endurance, stealth preservation, mechanical sustainability, and chemical limitations intersect to define a hard operational ceiling. Misinterpreting this leads to flawed conclusions about capability, survivability, and strategic utility. At the most fundamental level, submarine endurance is constrained by the weakest link among several independent subsystems. The intuitive assumption is that fuel defines how long a submarine can operate. Therefore, extended fuel supply or arranging at sea resupply would proportionally increase mission durations. This assumption collapses immediately when one examines how a diesel electric submarine like the Hangor class actually operates. Unlike nuclear submarines, which can remain submerged for months due to onboard reactors, conventional submarines rely on a combination of batteries, diesel engines, and an air independent propulsion AIP system. The AIP system allows the submarine to remain submerged for extended periods without snorkeling, but it is not an infinite energy source. It depends on stored oxidizers and fuel cells, both of which are finite. Once depleted, the submarine must snorkel to recharge batteries using diesel engines, exposing itself to radar, infrared, and acoustic detection. Therefore, fuel is not simply a quantity, a quantity to be extended. It is tied directly to exposure risk. The Hangor class submarine AIP capability is often highlighted as a decisive advantage, and within a narrow context, it is accurate. It enables the vessel to remain submerged for approximately 2 to 3 weeks without surfacing, significantly reducing detection probability in contested waters. However, this advantage is conditional. The AIP system operates at low power output suitable for silent cruising but not for high speed maneuvers. If the submarines need to reposition rapidly, evade threats, and pursue a target, it must rely on battery power or diesel propulsion, both of which accelerate energy consumptions. Thus, the endurance figure of 60 to 65 days is not a continuous submerged stealth duration but a composite mission timeline that includes varying operational nodes, each with its own constraints and trade off. Beyond propulsion, the most rigid constraint on submarine endurance is not mechanical but biological. Human endurance forms the true upper boundary of mission duration. Submarine crews operate in confined high stress environments with limited space, artificial lighting, and controlled atmospheres. Carbon dioxide buildup, oxygen management, humidity, and temperature all impose psychological stress over time. Cognitive performance declines, reaction time slows, and decision making quality deteriorates. Sleep cycles become fragmented due to shift rotations and operational demands. Even with disciplined routines, the cumulative effect of these factors imposes a practical limit on how long a crew can remain effective. Extending a mission beyond its threshold doesn't simply reduce comfort, it degrades combat effectiveness, increasing the probability of operational errors that can be fatal in a high stakes environment. Foods and consumables introduce another layer of constraint that is often misunderstood. While modern submarines are equipped with desalination systems to produce fresh water, food storage remains finite. The volume allocated for provisions is fixed at the time of deployment. Although rationing can extend supply, it becomes the cost of crew morale and physical performance. Theoretically, at sea, resupply could address this limitation. However, the act of resupply itself introduces a critical vulnerability. It requires the submarine to rendezvous with another vessel, operate near the surface, and maintain a predictable position for a period of time. In a surveillance rich environment such as the Arabian Sea, where multiple actors deploy maritime patrol aircraft, satellites, surface sensors, this exposure significantly increases the probability of detection. For a platform whose primary advantage is stealth, such exposure undermines its core operational value. Consequently, navies do not design doctrines around routine at sea resupply for diesel electric submarines. The limitation imposed by food is therefore not just logistical but strategic. Mechanical systems further constrain endurance in ways that are less visible but equally decisive. Submarines are complex assemblies of pumps, valves, sensors, electronic systems, and structural components, all operating under high pressure and continuous stress. While these systems are designed for reliability, they are not immune to wear and failure. Minor faults can escalate if not addressed properly, and the ability to conduct repairs at sea is limited. Unlike surface ships, submarines cannot easily access external components when submerged, and surfacing to perform maintenance increases exposure. Over a mission duration of 50 to 60 days, the cumulative probability of mechanical degradation becomes significant. This is why endurance figures are set conservatively. They reflect not just how long the submarine can operate under ideal conditions, but how long can it do so without unacceptable risk of system failure. When these constraints are combined, the endurance of the Hangor-class submarine emerges as a tightly bound operational envelope rather than a flexible parameter. Attempting to extend this envelope through measures such as sea resupply or aggressive rationing introduces trade offs that erode stealth, reliability, and crew effectiveness. The notion that endurance can be scaled linearly by addressing a single factor is therefore fundamentally flawed. In practice, the submarine mission duration is optimized to balance all constraints simultaneously, ensuring that it returns to base before any one factor becomes critical. The discussion of endurance also obscures a more important dimension of submarine capability availability. A submarine's strategic value is not determined by how long it can remain at sea in a single deployment, but by how often it can be deployed over time. This introduces the concept of mission to maintenance ratio, which reflects the proportion of time a submarine can spend operational versus undergoing maintenance, training, and refit. For diesel electric submarines like the Hangor-class, the ratio is shaped by multi-tiered maintenance cycles. After each patrol, the submarine undergoes a short turnaround period lasting several weeks, during which systems are inspected, minor repairs are conducted, and the crew is rotated. After several deployments, a more extensive maintenance phase is required, lasting months and involving deeper servicing of propulsion systems, sensors, and structural components. Periodically, the submarine enters a major overhaul cycle, which can last 1 to 2 years and involves dry docking, replacement of critical systems such as batteries and AIP modules, and comprehensive structural inspection. When averaged over the life cycle, these maintenance requirements result in an operational availability of approximately 30 to 50%. In practical terms, this means that out of a fleet of 8 Hangor-class submarines, only 2 to 4 are likely to be deployable at any given time. The rest are distributed across various stages of maintenance and preparation. This reality has profound strategic implications. If it demonstrates that the nominal fleet size doesn't translate directly into operational presence, the effective strength of the submarine force is determined by how many platforms can be sustained in an operational cycle, not how many exist on papers. Crew availability adds another layer of constraint that is often underestimated. Submarines operations require highly specialized training, and the pool of qualified personnel is limited. Each submarine requires a crew that is not technically proficient but also capable of operating under a unique psychological and physical demands of submerged operations. Training new crew is time consuming and resource intensive, and retaining experienced personnel is critical. As a result, even if additional submarines are acquired, the ability to deploy them effectively depends on the availability of trained crews. This creates a bottleneck that cannot be resolved through hardware acquisition alone. The strategic role of the Hangor-class submarine must therefore be understood within the context of these three constraints. It is not a platform designed for continuous long range power projection. It is optimized for sea denial in a specific geographic and operational environment. Its purpose is to complicate the adversary's use of maritime space, increasing the cost and the risk of operations in a contested waters. By leveraging stealth, it can threaten high value targets such as surface combatants and merchant vessels, forcing the adversary to allocate resources to anti submarine warfare and thereby diluting their offensive capacity. If equipped with submarine launched cruise missiles, it can contribute to strategic deterrence by providing a survivable second strike capability. However, this role is contingent on integration within a broader system. A submarine operating in isolation is limited by its sensors and situational awareness. To maximize effectiveness, it must be supported by intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets that provide targeting information and operational context. Communication systems must enable coordination without compromising stealth, and command structures must be designed to function under the constraints of low bandwidth, high latency communication. Without this integration, the submarine capability are underutilized and its impact on the operational environment is diminished. In evaluating the Hangor-class submarine, it is therefore necessary to move beyond simplistic metrics such as endurance and to consider the interplay of constraints that define its operational reality. Endurance is not a measure of limitless capacity, but a carefully balanced compromise among competitive factions. Maintenance cycles limit availability, crew requirements constrain deployment, and the need to preserve stealth restricts operational flexibility. These factors collectively shape the submarine's contribution to naval strategy, determining not just what it can do, but how often, under what conditions it can do. The result is a platform that is effective within its intended role but bounded by structural limitations that cannot be overcome through incremental adjustments. It is capable of imposing costs and creating uncertainty, but not of dominating the maritime doctrine. Its endurance is sufficient for its mission profile, but not extendable without compromising its core advantage. Understanding this distinction is essential for any realistic assessment of its capabilities. Without it, analysis remains trapped in the illusion that longer endurance equates to greater power, overlooking the more complex and decisive factors that govern submarine warfare.